Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the 6th episode of the story in which instead of being a simple orphan or the child of random civilians, Namikaze Minato was born as Senju Minato, a member of the Senju clan and grandson of the Second Hokage, Senju Tobirama. See what happens when Naruto grows up and inherits the clan with 1,000 skills. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. Konohagakure no Sato, the Hokage's Tower, 31th October. The room within the Hokage's Tower, designated to host the foreign Kages, was neither a large nor a small place. It was neither imposing nor too welcoming. A simple room, like all the others within the tower with amber-red walls. The only thing that differed from the rest was the expensive furniture that was placed in the middle of it, for any foreign dignitary to feel comfortable. 5 couches. Each were of the same size, and each had their own color that was reserved for a specific Kage who would visit, even if such a visit did not occur in nearly 20 years. On one side of the wall, pictures of all Konohagakure's Hokages hung proudly, watching over the center of the room where one table for drinks and couches for sitting were placed. And on those couches, the 3 men that were hailed as the strongest, not only in their respective villages, but of the elemental nations as well sat, chatting on various things and laughing as a few old war pals. Behind all of them stood their bodyguards in addition to the Jonin sensei of the finalist team from their village. Baki of Sunagakure stood firmly in the middle of the other 2 Kazekage's guards, whose names Kakashi did not know. Baki's stature showed everyone how the military man should behave. Arms folded together behind his back, contrary to the other 2 guards who had them hidden beneath their robes. And his half-covered face morphed into a stern look, focused on the table in front of the 3 Kages. The Raikage guards were the complete opposite of the Suna group. The laid-back Darui looked like he wanted to fall asleep right then and there, while the big-chested blonde woman, Samui, stood with her arms crossed showcasing her generous cleavage, and with a frown on her face. Well, Naruto was right when he described her breasts. Kakashi mused inwardly while having bored look on the outside. Similarly to that of Darui. Behind Samui and Darui, a Jonin sensei of the Kumogakure team stood Mabui. She was in turn the opposite of the other 2. A blank face, hands folded together in front of her, and posture firm. Dutiful. Kakashi heard the story she was actually the Raikage secretary as well, but he did not know why she was placed to lead a team to these exams. The Hatake man was told by his student, Naruto, about the talk he had with the said beauty. And about the generous gift she gave him. While Naruto's tone was neutral like it was on many other occasions, Kakashi could sense a foreign sense of fondness that was not present in Naruto in the past. Kakashi realized that his student probably had a slight crush on the Kumo woman. But that was expected of the boy his age. Kakashi knew that Naruto had read Jiraiya's books at least once. So the pervy streak should not be foreign to the boy. Along with the lustful thoughts that came with his age. A certain amount of familiarity with such a woman should pave the way to those thoughts. In any case, the other 2 Hokage's guards, Reito and Genma, stood firmly behind their leader, with Kakashi a bit behind them. Is this the largest gathering of the Kages since the Second Kage Summit or what? The Raikage asked in his raspy voice while having a satisfied smile on his face, and leaning back to his couch as he said it. I believe it is, Raikage Dono. The Sandaime said in a kind and proud manner. Not even the peace talks of the Third War gathered the leaders together. I am certainly proud to host the exams that brought the opportunity for this gathering. Indeed you should be, Hokage. Kakashi noticed the man omitting the title, but the Sandaime paid no attention to that. The Raikage was a proud man who most likely believed himself to be above the other 2. A shame that Inoki is not here. I'd wager that the man must be dying from curiosity, if not of the old age. I have to agree with that, Raikage Dono. Raza said with a fake smile on his face. His voice betrayed his true feelings more than he would like. Anakidono doesn't know what chance he's missing. But I'm more interested in Hokagedono telling us how he had the greatest star of these exams hidden all these years. He addressed the Sandaime as he spoke. A pointless attempt to gouge out inaccessible information. Not everything can be hidden from the world, especially such an exotic information in regards to Naruto-kun, Kazakagedono. The Sandaime said bluntly, smiling and acting unperturbed. But Kakashi understood what he meant to say beneath those words. It was a dangerous reply, but Raza seemed to not have taken notice of it. Yes, yes. The Raikage nodded, a giant grin apparent on his face, as he turned to the Hokage. I was surprised to hear the news of the boy's existence, but I'm nonetheless happy that Minato had a son before he died. I wonder why. We all are, Raikagedono. The Sandaime said with a nod. Naruto-kun grew not only to be a great shinobi, but a great man as well. Just as Minato was. It is strange to me that Inoki did not attempt to somehow use this opportunity to see the boy himself. He did, after all, reveal his identity to the world. Raza said in a monotone voice, his gaze moving between the other Kages. In other words, he refused to be a part of your invasion. Kakashi thought inwardly. If the offer was ever on the table. A pang of relief passed through his body. Though he was told that there was a chance that one of the Stone Daimyo's guards was actually a spy for IWA. Perhaps they have learned their lesson from the past wars. Who knows what that man thinks? The Raikage said with a shrug. All I know is that he's missing an opportunity to see the boy himself. While you're able to. Kakashi momentarily thought that Kumogakure might be part of the invasion, but analyzing the speech pattern from both Raza and no such connection could be made. Raza seemed tense from time to time, whereas the Raikage emanated a carefree attitude. Completely unaware of the plot behind the outer appearances. We received no message from him ever since the peace agreement. It seems that he decided to curb his warmongering behavior as he got old. The Hokage said with a small smile. Perhaps he did. Raza said evadingly, leaning back on his couch. It is better for all of us. But tell me what is going on with the mist. Strange reports came to me saying that Yagura is dead, but no other news arrived. Again, his eyes flickered from the Sarutobi to back and forth. Same here. The Raikage gruffed in a displeased manner, shaking a cup of sake in his hand left and right. I know not the name of the new Mizukage or the strength. It seems we are all in the same boat regarding that village. Sarutobi said. They are in a tougher lockdown than they were during Yagura's reign. Or Amigakure for that matter. Raza commented. Indeed. I'm glad I'm not in their camp, considering the participants this year. The future of both the Senju and the Uchiha clan. It is once in a lifetime gathering. The Raikage said with an excited smirk. He seemed to have come here just to see Naruto. Kakashi turned his one-eyed gaze towards the rest of the Kumogakure group for a moment. But Darui and Samui remained the same as they were. Mabui on the other hand, did not hide a slight frown from her face as she stared at one point behind the Raikage's back. Interesting. Kakashi mused. Could it be that she likes Naruto? A perverted thought came to his mind, of his student in the arms of such beauty. He fought a giggle from escaping his mouth. Better not to have all the eyes turned on him. And embarrass his village along the way. Naruto did tell him though, that Mabui met his father before. Perhaps her affection passed on to the son? Yet for all her good intentions, Kakashi couldn't bring himself to trust any of them. He fought against Iwagakure in the last war. And even lost his best friend against them. But the distrust towards Iwagakure was the least present in Kakashi's mind. As the natural enemies, the enmity from their side was expected. A passive enemy was far more dangerous than the one you never knew when to expect an attack. And that is what Kumogakure was to Konoha. Because in the case of IWA, they always had an incident that diplomatic talks couldn't heal. Have you heard about this new village that is being formed in the land of rice paddies? The Raikage asked, his gaze moving from Kazekage to Hokage back and forth. Indeed we have. Sarutobi said, scuffling in his seat to get more comfortable. Though we have no idea why they decided to form it out of nowhere. The question came genuinely curious on the surface. Even if he knew the answer already. I was hoping they would at least send some genins to participate. No better way to see their strength than in the exams. The Raikage admitted with a shrug. While Raza eyed both of them suspiciously. The Kazekage remained silent, his eyes not looking at either of the other two. It was a question that Kakashi wondered as well. If the reports from Kabuto's interrogation said anything, it was that Orochimaru planned to involve his new village in these exams as much as he could. Along with the subsequent invasion. But he did not. No genins were sent to participate. And most importantly, there were no signs of Orochimaru, either during the previous rounds or now. Konohagakure no Sato, the arena, November 1st, I don't think I ever saw so many people in one place before. Sasuke said, looking up from their position in the middle of the arena. Indeed. Naruto slowly nodded as he stood right next to him. Dressed in a pitch-black tunic, with his gray armor donned on his body. Arms crossed together, while bandages were tied on both of his hands, all the way to his elbows. Clean, white wolf's fur was resting on his shoulders, and he was sure that it would be useful for what was to come. It may be November, but even the early winter knew how to be hot in the land of fire. Chakra flowing through his body took care of that issue. Just as it did for the other Chunins and Jonins of his village. Otherwise, they would all melt in the scorching summers. Not far from them, teams of Kyumo and Suna stood evenly distanced from each other. The arena was filled with both the people from Konoha and the outside, with the latter being mostly the rich nobles of both the land of fire and the foreign nations. All coming here to witness the biannual spectacle of young ninjas fighting each other for their own amusement. Not knowing what was to come. Naruto could sense a few chakra signatures that belonged to the people he knew. But not of his classmates. They had their tasks to do as well. Evacuating the civilians who were in the village among many things. The streets couldn't be empty. Just as the arena couldn't be empty either. But he could not sense the chakra of people that were closest to him. Uncle Kosuke and Kakashi Sensei were somewhere else. Knowing the fate of the former and uncertainty of the latter made Naruto remember the conversation he had with the old man on his birthday. But he cried his tears already. He just hoped he would not need to cry more of them. Flashback, why? Naruto asked, looking at Sarutobi directly into his eyes, who did not waver even for a second, piercing back through him. For the safety of the village. Was the simple reply. After meeting him at the cemetery, Naruto was invited to the Hokage's tower by the Sandaime to discuss some things. And while Naruto expected it to be something out of paramount importance to the village, he did not expect it to be on those scales. A new village called Otogakure no Sato was formed, and by none other than Orochimaru, former shinobi of Konoha. He allied his new village with Suna, a supposed ally of Konoha, to crush the latter in the joint invasion during the final stage of the Chunin exams when they would not expect it. Or so they hoped. His plan was discovered only because Naruto was a little more curious when he made another traitor Saburo reveal himself. You discovered his plans from Saburo? He asked, getting back to the start of their conversation. Remembering the Rouge Nin also made him curious about what actually happened to him in the end. Not quite. Hiruzen said with a smile. Only because you made him reveal himself did we discover his actual superior in the village that acted under Orochimaru's orders. And that's how we found out about his invasion plans. But why do you want me to join a team and go and flood a few villages? That was something he did not understand. And that was his mission, though he felt there were more to come with the information he received just now. 2 villages that lie by the Toshio River to the west and 1 village that is placed by the Akari River to the north, are also located in the direction through which the invasion forces will definitely pass. Countless villages have suffered when the invasion was commenced in the past 3 wars, and I have no intention of letting more suffer in what I want, just to be a small and one-time invasion. Sarutobi explained with a firm tone. In fact, only one exists on that road to the north as people have left the other ones in the previous wars. But wouldn't it be better if you just evacuated them? Naruto asked. Seeing how Yashikata and his son Yusukura lived made Naruto believe that the average commoner of the countryside should be exposed and suffer from the shinobi battles, as much as ninjas of the Benesu Islands were involved in the world wars. Destroying their livelihoods was nearly as bad as them getting caught in a crossfire during the wars. But then it clicked him. You want them to reach Konoha? He asked slowly with a skeptical look. Hiruzen nodded gravely. It is better if they reach all the way here. Naruto continued looking at him in silence. If we deal with them here, beneath our walls, the entire war might come to an end instantly. If I stop the exams now, it might draw the other villages to join the fray, and then we'll really have a world war. Naruto knew that the old man was right. And the new war against the other 2 villages would have Konoha fight on 2 fronts simultaneously. It is prudent that both Oto and Suna do not back off as they invade before we deal a striking blow to their alliance, but it is also a must that the civilian casualties from the outside are non-existent or at the very least, minimal. The villagers will simply be relocated to the sanctuaries in the hills. Or the other camps that are made for situations in case of a natural catastrophe. He had to smile hearing that. The natural catastrophe that we are going to create. Exactly. The old man smiled in return. The team you'll be part of was the one I created specifically for these types of missions. The team leader, Karasawa-san, should explain to you your part in 3 days when your mission should begin. Don't worry, it won't take more than a week to finish the task at hand. He could do that. Not that much could change in relation to his fight with Gaara. There was nothing new except for his already existing skills that could help him beat. His water affinity should be enough if his calculations were correct. But why are you certain that they will go in that direction? What if they decide to pass by a populous town and decide to raze it along the way? Naruto asked. They won't. Sarutobi said firmly, closing his eyes and explaining. We found out about the invasion route from the Saburo Superior, Kabuto. It is too late for them to change their plans now if they are going with the invasion. Our borders are more than just rivers, mountains, and lines on various maps. Places through which they plan to pass are the one Orochimaru suggested to them. The one where the defenses are the weakest, and the route through which they could best hide their travels, even if they would need to eliminate the civilians along the way. An entire town is a much bigger fish to fry. Naruto remained silent as he listened. He wasn't a captain or a general. The old man must have thought about this for a long time. But there was another thing that troubled him as he looked at the table in front of him, in nothing in particular. Something troubles you, Naruto-kun? The old man asked. Naruto's eyes moved towards the sandaime, meeting his gaze. What about Gaara? He asked directly the most important question at the moment. Surely, the enemy Jinchuriki would have a larger role than a simple match against him. Sarutobi sighed, remaining silent for a moment before speaking up, but not before pulling a scroll from beneath his desk. I was going to give you this the day after the end of the second round, but from what Jiraiya and Kosuke have told me, I let you have a little time to rest. He tossed the scroll towards him, which Naruto caught, opening it up and proceeding to read what was written inside. Similar things to what Mabui gave him, if not identical. But there was a technique that was written in one part of the scroll. One that he saw for the first time, but one that would help him immensely. Not only against Gaara, but possibly against other Jinchurikis, if it ever came to the point he would fight against them for survival. You will need to knock him down as he is the key to their invasion. Naruto stayed silent as he listened to what Hokage said. But his blue eyes were focused on the old man as he spoke further. We need to capture him alive, his siblings as well. The old man said as he proceeded to explain the necessity of the situation. The Sand siblings would be Konoha's hostages to keep Suna out of the war in case Konoha's resources should be directed to fight Orochimaru. But as Naruto listened to the Hokage's explanation, he felt once again that he hadn't been told everything. The moment of truth came closer to him when he was told that Gaara should go berserk in a match either against him or Sasuke. But he wasn't told the reason why Sasuke was important here. Was I purposely set to fight against Gaara in the first match? He asked slowly, distrust in his voice was showing. Sarutobi did not avert his gaze, opting to remain silent for a time. You were. He said in the end with a sigh. So when were you planning to tell me that? In case you haven't read this report, Gaara is not some random shinobi I am to beat, but a vanguard of the invasion. He asked indignantly, an anger boiling up in him. He hated being left in a dark or being manipulated. Both at the same time. I was going to tell you that, but I did not want to place more pressure on you. I know you've been under a lot of stress lately, Naruto-kun. But believe me when I say that your mental health is just as important to me as it is to you. Along with your physical health. True. He was under a lot of stress lately, but who wouldn't be in his place? Though his life had many happy and peaceful moments, the past few months haven't been kind to him. From his failed mission at Wave to the pursuit of the Akatsuki. Still. He wouldn't let this matter go easily. I hope you don't do that in the future. You know I have always listened to you. The least you can give me was trust. Naruto said to him. He was hurt being kept in the dark. Maybe he should listen to what his godfather told him and hire a hooker. Or he should just relieve himself by his own hand. A pair of large mounds he had a dinner with today certainly left much to the imagination. Sarutobi nodded. There are some things that need to be kept out of the eyes of the public. He said slowly. But anything regarding you will be told, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded gratefully, but a distrust was still inside him. Then I accept your mission, Hokage-sama. He said formally before adding more. Both missions. It was not a time to vent out his frustrations. Sarutobi smiled in gratitude, but his smile turned into a bitter one as he spoke the following words. There is one more thing I wanted to discuss with you, Naruto-kun. Naruto raised his right eyebrow, but said nothing, waiting for the old man to speak. It is concerning our common acquaintance Shimura Danzo. He said with narrowed eyes. Naruto did not show any signs of a surprise there, but he felt that whatever he has done, or whatever he talked with the darkness of the shinobi, was neither treasonous nor something that would put him in trouble. End of flashback. The rest of the conversation remained clouded in Naruto's mind while he stood in the middle of the arena. Hundreds of voices from the spectators mixed together created a barrier for his mind to focus on. And the conversation regarding Danzo was at the end of his head right now. Excitement must be brewing inside them. They had no idea what was coming. He fulfilled the task that was required of him. Joining a team of selected shinobi gave a sense of understanding to Naruto at why the old man kept some things hidden from him. The members of his team did not even know why they were required to destroy the livelihood of those villagers back then, but did their task without complaints or questions. Naruto suspected that the team leader, Karasawa Genba, knew all the details, but was ordered to remain silent because of the other members of the team. He was a bald middle-aged man with brown mustaches and a scar over his left eye, which was always closed. Naruto found the team leader a decent person. He neither scorned him for the 9 tails, nor did he shower him with praise, hoping that one day, when the Senju clan was rebuilt he would be in good graces with them. A professional through and through. Naruto's mission was to locate the additional underground sources of water on the rocky grounds near those 3 villages where the new source of the river would be made, but in the meantime would destroy the crops for the time being, once the village was flooded. All for the sake of appearances. Naruto did the task that was required of him and realized in the meantime why the old man chose him for that mission. Not everyone had a strong affinity for water to sense where the underground source of water could be located. And while he could select someone else, someone more experienced for the task, the young Senju was grateful it was him who was chosen. Giving me a mission of paramount importance was his way of telling me how important my fight against Gaara really was. He still held a slight grudge for being left in the dark, but he pushed it away from his thoughts. As now he had more important things to deal with. Looking towards Gaara, Naruto saw him standing with his siblings, though a bit separated from them. His back was slightly hunched. No doubt from the weight of that gourd on his back and all the sand he carried with him. But his eyes were focused on the Kage's booth above the stands of the noblemen below them. And his way of saying he was sorry for manipulating me. Naruto then looked onto Sasuke, who had his eyes closed, with his hands in the pockets of his black shorts. He seemed calm, even though he knew what was at stake here, as he too had his own task to do. Sasuke was to fight against the red-haired Kumo girl, Karui, but that fight would never come to be. And Sasuke knew that well. As the seconds turned to minutes, so did the sound of the excited audience grew louder and louder. Naruto wondered how many people were cheering for him. Or how many people were betting on him. Perhaps he should have done that as well. Alright everyone, listen up. A Konoha Jonin with eyeglasses and dark spiky hair spoke with a loud voice and a smile on his face, as he appeared in the middle of the stadium. Yamashiro Aoba, Naruto remembered. One of Kakashi Sensei's friends, albeit a bit older. All the genins turned their attention towards him. The loud sound of the audience was being subdued as well. Welcome to the biannual Chunin selection exams hosted by Konohagakure no Sato and our esteemed Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. The clapping of the noblemen and cheers of the audience was heard in the instant. And Naruto wondered if the old man enjoyed being praised by the people at that moment. Aoba continued explaining the rules of the fights and introducing himself. Killing was allowed, but if he saw that match was over, then he, as a proctor, could stop it immediately and declare a winner. Those who go against the rules, or his word, would be disqualified. Naruto did not doubt that Aoba knew about the invasion as well. Just as many other Jonins and Chunins of Konoha knew. In fact, many of them were currently on the walls of the village or in the forests outside. Waiting for the enemy to arrive, so they could send their souls to the Pure Land. For those of you who don't know it by now, the following matches are: Match number 1, Senju Naruto vs Gaara of Sunagakure. Match number 2, Ni Yujito vs Kankuro of Sunagakure. Match number 3, Uchiha Sasuke vs Karui of Kumogakure. And match number 4, Temari of Sunagakure vs Omoi of Kumogakure. Aoba listed, before continuing. Except for Senju Naruto and Gaara of Sunagakure, the rest of you wait in the finalists stands up there. He pointed out. Good luck. Sasuke said to him with a confident smirk before he started walking away. Sounds of the audience slowly started taking over the entire arena as the other finalist began leaving the stadium. It was a pleasant sound to his ears. Thanks. Naruto said in a whisper, just enough so Sasuke could hear him say it, looking the Uchiha's back as he walked further and further towards the finalist stands. He did not turn back or acknowledge his gratitude. Naruto sighed good-naturedly at that. He wondered what Sasuke thought of today's war tobe. Knowing him, he's probably excited at the prospect of a fight. In the finalist stands just as they all stood far apart from each other in the middle of the arena a few moments ago, so did they stood in the finalist stands as Sasuke observed the other finalists. Suna siblings stood by the wall, and they looked nervous and unsure of the fight that is about to happen. He would have to keep a close eye on them, as they were his targets to capture, of course. Sasuke was told of the invasion that was about to happen a week before the finals, in a meeting with both Kakashi and the Sandaime. Being given a task at the same time, it was prudent of him to be involved. But he was also told that he was a target of a former Konoha shinobi, the Sannin Orochimaru. A target to become his new body in order for the Sannin to acquire his Sharingan. The Sandaime was detailed in the dangers and consequences of becoming involved with his former student. The one thought that lounged in Sasuke's mind was the one that his clan would definitely die out if he ever went with the Rouge Sannin. Not that he would. For Sasuke never considered himself as a traitor. Itachi was the Uchiha traitor after all. And Sasuke told himself he would not follow in his footsteps. Looking down at Naruto, he wondered how his teammate would face in this battle, for he had the hardest task of all. But he also wondered if the fight has already started on the outside of the village's walls. Despite not feeling much connection to the wider village and its population, Sasuke loathed to see it turn into the bloodbath that happened in his clan. The moment he thought about it, his grip on the railings of the finalist lounge tightened. When are they going to start? Sasuke heard the girl he was supposed to fight against complain loudly to her teammates. They've been staring at each other for how long? 5 minutes? Sasuke glanced at their group from the corners of his eyes. The three of them stood in the middle between him and the Sand siblings. Jinchuriki girl, Yujito, smiled as she spoke. You really don't want them to go all out, Karui. Better that they just eye each other for now. True. The other dark-skinned boy, Omoi, spoke. As he pulled out his lollipop from his mouth. Just imagine if one of them loses control over their Biju. Everyone in this arena could possibly die, and we as well. Perhaps not even Sensei would be able to calm them down. He spoke one thing after another as if the end of the world came closer and closer. Though, the tone of his voice was low and linear. Even the Sand siblings looked at him from the side, worried and unsure expressions still echoed on their faces. Almost oblivious to genins of their rival villages, Karui scolded her teammate. Just shut up and stop being so paranoid. Then she said in a bored tone. I just want them to begin already. She looked at him from the side, a faint blush appearing in her cheeks, though Sasuke ignored her. At least Konoha is not the only one who has the fangirls. As he watched the still figures of the two Jinchurikis, Sasuke noticed that they were finally about to start the fight, as the cork on Gaara's gourd was sent flying into the distance, and sand slowly emerged from it like lava from a volcano. But Naruto remained still, unmoving in his place, while more and more of Gaara's sand emerged from his gourd. If he was told before seeing it with his own eyes, Sasuke would not have believed that an entire beach could be stored in such a small object. He must be creating a new sand from his own chakra. Flaring up his Sharingan, Sasuke could see traces of Gaara's chakra spontaneously spread in the massive sand, holding it in the air. Naruto will have his hands full with that. Unlike the wild and mad look that Gaara had previously, now he was composed, as Naruto watched him from his position in the arena. Aoba has long declared the match to begin, but neither Naruto or Gaara moved from their positions. Only stares were exchanged, and Naruto struggled more to understand Gaara's personality from that exchange than make a move and attack. Gaara's eyes screamed hatred, even though his body was silent. His feelings, on the other hand, were much more complex. Sadness, hatred, anguish, and even joy emanated from him. You're welcome. The Kyuubi said in his head. Somehow, I think I'd be happier if I could not sense his emotions. Naruto said in a laughing tone to the fox. He was in fact thankful that he was given the ability to sense the negative emotions from other people. It could be very useful in the future. Know that if you lose to Shikaku's brat, I will renegade any deal I have with you, and I'll do everything I can to leave this prison. He snarled to him in the end, though Naruto could hear pieces of enjoyment in his voice. Looking at Gaara, Naruto still saw that murderous look of his hidden behind a bored facade. I could have been like him. Naruto repeated those words in his head, taking that moment to thank the gods for not becoming like that. The wait was over, and his real nature comes to light now. He realized why the Jinchuriki of the One-Tails acted the way he did before. Gaara was excited at the prospect of killing him. What did they fill his head with? Naruto wondered. That could be one of the explanations for Gaara's behavior. A cork from his gourd was suddenly sent flying away, but Naruto did not move an inch, nor did he bother drawing any sort of weapons. Sand emerged above Gaara, shadowing him, and part of the terrain around, but he still did not send any attack. The sounds of the audience talking has long been subdued, as they all watched the match in front of them in silence. Naruto moved his right leg over the surface of the ground back, a small dust following in his wake from the sides of his feet. Gaara said something under his breath, but as he was too far away from him, Naruto could only read from the movement of his lips. Existence. That was the word Naruto was sure that Gaara said, but he did not have time to dwell on that thought, as the floating sand was finally sent flying towards him. Like a tsunami charging to wipe out a coastal town, the sand charged at him, but Naruto simply jumped backward, holding himself against the wall that stood behind him. But Gaara did not wait a second longer, as a few spikes emerged from the sand that laid on the ground where Naruto previously stood. Even though he stood even further than he did previously, the sound of Gaara's monotone, but hoarse voice was now heard. Sand spikes. He outstretched his hand towards him. Naruto leaped leftwards with his speed evading Sunanin's attack. As he landed on the ground by the wall on the other side of the arena, he turned back, seeing at that moment how Gaara's sand spears clashed with the wall where he stood. No damage was made, as his opponent must have noticed him evading the attack. He's trying to conserve his chakra. A new attack from the sand charged towards him, but instead of going to the left again, Naruto returned to his previous position, holding himself by the wall. Gaara left plenty of the sand by that place before he sent another attack. But that was what Naruto wanted. Going through the sequence of hand signs, Naruto gathered chakra in his stomach and exhaled from his mouth a long flow of water, hoping to make some of the sand heavy and thus useless. Water release, water bullet technique. But as the flow of water from his mouth was about to turn Gaara's sand into its heavier version, the sand itself scattered left and right, quickly rising into the air, while the water simply clashed with the ground, creating a minor lake. Or better said, a large pond. Naruto raised his eyebrow at the quick movement of sand, which directly charged at him. However, he managed to evade it in the last second, jumping to his right with all the speed he could muster. The moment he landed, he heard the sound of Gaara's sand clashing with the wall. This time, leaving a rather large crack in its construction, with some of the broken rocks from the wall being made, dropping to the ground one by one as the sand retreated back towards Gaara. He went for a direct kill there. Naruto thought as he stood up and watched as Gaara's sand from all sides returned to its owner. Do you take me for a fool, Senju Naruto? Gaara's monotone voice rose up as he mentioned his name. He wasn't even fully turned towards him, only looking at him from the corner of his eye, but being faced up towards the direction where Naruto moved after his first attack. Did you think I would be an easy opponent you could defeat without much work? Naruto did not answer right away, as he waited and watched the sand gather around Gaara, but he left some of it close to Naruto. The Senju still had the traces of the water he previously used on his mouth. Wiping it aside, he answered. The same can be said about you. It'll take more than just a random mindless charge to take me off guard. Mindless charges of the sand wouldn't be enough to beat someone of the Senju blood. But Naruto felt slightly uncomfortable at saying that loudly with all the people present in the arena. But it will tire you eventually, if you don't run away from your chakra, Gaara. Naruto knew that maintaining all that sand could be more of a burden than a gift. And Gaara did not look like someone who was in good physical shape to last too long. Unless Shikaku somehow gives him the strength to continue. Gaara did not say anything else, but the sand that was close to Naruto quickly rose up from the ground and was sent flying towards him. Needle Jizo. Naruto thought as he went through a quick sequence of hand signs, with the white fur from his shoulders enveloping him in a protective hug from head to toes, but leaving just enough space for his hands to move with more ease inside. He couldn't see anything outside of it. The sand clashed with the steeled fur, but the defense did not waver. But the sand continued attacking and attacking, failing to break through each time. No sand could be raised from the hard ground. Go on, you bastard. Waste your chakra and your strength. And while Gaara continued attacking, and even pressuring his steeled fur with the sand from all sides inside his protective dome offer, Naruto went for another sequence of hand signs. But instead of his body, he focused on the water outside. Water in the air itself. Water release, water colliding wave. He still couldn't see anything, but water itself began leaking into his protective dome from the air, getting the earth wet. He still focused on gathering the water from the air, sending it all the way forward in the direction of Gaara where he sensed his location was. But he eventually stopped, as the sand attacks have long ceased to clash with his steeled fur. The attack itself was something akin to a tsunami. Release. The protective fur retreated to its normal size, and Naruto got a full view of the terrain around him, as well as his enemy. The field was covered with dozens of minor ponds with wet sand leaking from it. Gaara, on the other hand, was flying on some sort of sand cloud in the air. You can fly? He asked incredulously. But whether Gaara heard him or not, he did not answer. He only looked at Naruto in contempt, exchanging the looks between him and the mud that was previously his sand. As you wish. Naruto muttered under his breath, summoning 4 shurikens from the seal on his bandage-covered arm and sending them flying towards Gaara. Suna Jinchuriki did not move or react, except for the constant floating of his sand cloud up and down in the air. But the point of Naruto's attack was not to hit him anyway. The sand around Gaara formed a protective wall around him, absorbing the 4 shurikens in it at first, but after 2 seconds sending them back towards Naruto at greater speed than Senju sent them in the first place. Pulling out a kunai from his pouch, Naruto deflected 3 of them, except for one, which he grabbed with the end of his kunai through the little hole in it, letting it circle before its movement quelled. This time, he sent only that shuriken towards Gaara, but in the midst of it, Naruto multiplied it by 20. Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. And again, Gaara's sand appeared to protect him from his attack, but Naruto noticed that there was more of it gathered around him this time. The shurikens were stuck in the sand wall, but as Gaara was about to send them flying back to Naruto once again, the shurikens exploded, creating a large ball of smoke in the air where Gaara floated on his sand cloud. Great Shuriken Clone Explosion. Naruto thought as he channeled his chakra into those shuriken clones, his hands placed in a tiger sign. And the attack succeeded. A cloud of smoke enveloped Gaara as he flew in the air. But at the same time, 5 sand bullets flew towards Naruto. Naruto didn't jump away, as the bullets weren't particularly fast. He only moved a step away, thinking of letting them go past by him. But at the moment as the bullets flew by him, they exploded, with some of the sand getting into his eyes. How did I not see this coming? Naruto thought bitterly, as he rubbed his eyes, cleaning it from any tiny grouses of sand that stuck in them. And that was all that Gaara needed. As he landed on the ground, he sent some of his remaining sand towards Naruto, intending to crush him like he did before. Fuck. Naruto jumped into the air, while his eyes were still red, teary, and itching with annoyance, but the sand followed. And as it was about to grab him, Naruto went through a few hand signs, focusing on gathering the wind in his hands. Wind release, gale palm. The wind was sent from his hands towards the sand, pushing it away, and even dispersing some of it. But it also pushed Naruto away on the other side of the arena, particularly onto the middle section of the arena wall, one that was faced towards the north. The crowd cheered in support, and he had to smile at that. Gaara stood in the middle of the arena but did not pursue his attack further. Instead, he stood calmly, gathering his remaining sand around himself, and forming a ball-like protection around himself. Naruto took that time to massage his eyes a bit, and his eyesight became blurred for a moment before it returned to normal. He focused his gaze on Gaara, who still hid himself in his protective dome. As Naruto focused on his sensory ability, he noticed that more and more demonic chakra, Shikaku's chakra, was present in the Gaara, although at a slow pace. So he's finally planning to transform. Naruto mused inwardly. He momentarily went for the counterattack. As Gaara continued gathering more of Shikaku's chakra, Naruto went through a quick sequence of hand signs, gathering the water chakra in his stomach. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. A massive water dragon emerged from the place where he stood and was sent flying towards Gaara and his protection. But once it clashed with it, it disappeared into regular water. He must be strengthening it as much as he can. The sand protection got darker, as if it was turned into earth. Let's see if it will protect you from this. Naruto said quietly, as he went through another sequence of hand signs, the ones that were meant to summon a far stronger attack. Water release, water severing wave. Naruto said in his mind, once he clapped his hands together, sending a far stronger and devastating attack than he did the first time from his mouth. He fired the high-pressure steam from his mouth 5 times, each time striking Gaara's protection and blowing it away. The final 6th time, Naruto fired a weaker attack that hit Gaara on his right shoulder. His painful scream was heard through the entire arena. And as the sand shattered onto the ground, and as Gaara struggled to stand still, covering the wound on his shoulder with his other hand, panting heavily, Naruto took that moment to finish the fight. Appearing in front of him, Naruto punched Gaara in the face, but as he did, he felt something cracking up like a porcelain, and it was not a bone. What is he? Something akin to a black abyss stared at him from the hole in Gaara's cheek, but Naruto did not dare to dwell too much on it. He made 2 shadow clones to hold Gaara, while he placed a seal on him. The sand did not even bother attacking him or preventing his movements. As the clones held Gaara up, with one of them kicking the gourd away, while the other removed the white scarf and the upper part of his black suit, revealing the seal he never saw before but read much about. It was red in color and in a form of the kanji for love, the same as that of the tattoo that Gaara had on his forehead. It was a 2-element seal, one that could keep Shikaku at bay, if the user wanted it to. 1. 5-element seal. Naruto said as he slammed his hand onto Gaara's stomach, getting another cry in anguish from the auburn-haired Jinchuriki before he was rendered unconscious. The 2 of his clones still held him in their arms. The Fuinjutsu which he used was a gift from the old man on his birthday. But Naruto figured it was another one in line of his apologies. Not that he complained, it did its job. Aoba landed near them, inspecting Gaara's pulse while Naruto took a few steps back. After a few seconds or so, Aoba stood firm, facing him. Good work. He simply said, before turning towards the audience. The first match of the Chunin selection exams is over. The winner is Senju Naruto. Aoba said as the crowd erupted into a wave of cheers. 2 Anbu took that chance to appear near him. Cat and Eagle, Naruto remembered. We'll take it over from here on, Naruto-san. Cat said to him. Good work. He said nothing, only giving a smile in return. And they disappeared right away, taking Gaara with themselves. Aoba spoke again to the roaring crowd. We'll have a 5-minute pause before we move on to the next match. Naruto snorted hearing that his own match did not last that long. But he mused that Aoba did that for the sake of the entire operation. Go on then, kid. And do the rest of your mission. Aoba turned to him. Right away. Naruto said as he body flickered away in a combination of leaves and water. Not to the finalist stands, but onto the hidden part of the audience stands, behind all the people that were currently engaging in whatever conversations they had. He focused on emanating the chakra on the wide section of the arena. From the Kage's booth, across the stands to the place where the other finalists stood. It was better for the remaining civilians who weren't evacuated and the noblemen from the other nations, to be as clueless as they could get. And not to run amok mindlessly. Spreading panic as well. Temple of Nirvana technique. And the white feathers started falling down and putting the innocents to a long nap. If they hadn't fallen during his match, then it was up to him to keep the appearances. Kage's booth, that water technique should have drained him to a near exhaustion. Samui commented quietly as she stood behind him. The Raikage couldn't help but agree as he watched. And he doesn't seem fazed at all by that. He only said, not even blinking as he didn't want to miss the show. The fight moved fast, though not as fast as his own battles with Minato. But looking at his son and the way he evades Gaara's attacks, he couldn't help but compare the two. Though, the boy still had much to train to reach his father's level. At least he fought with his brain. And the fight was soon over. Once the sand was useless, the Suna boy was practically crippled. And as the Yondaime Raikage thought about that, a real wound was given to the son of the Kazekage. Along with a strange seal he never saw before, but one that made a strange and uncomfortable feeling to appear in his gut. It ended the fight pretty much. So as that report said. Wind and water affinities. A large chakra reserves. The two ANBUs appeared to take the other Jinchuriki away. But the Raikage did not focus his mind on that. He's fast, and he obviously has a slight talent with Fuinjutsu. He could become a dangerous enemy one day. But his abilities were the testament of his blood. And that is what intrigued him the most. The Raikage did not see any hand-to-hand combat in the fight, but he did not doubt that boy was adept in it. I wonder what else he knows. What is the meaning of this, Hokagedono? Kazekage said, clenching his teeth in anger, his eyebrows furrowed together in displeasure. Where are your ANBUs taking my son? Only to the hospital so he could be given a medical treatment. The last attack Naruto-kun gave him was from one of the strongest techniques of our esteemed Nidaime Hokage. The things could turn ugly if he does not receive an aid. Sarutobi said, smiling with each word he spoke. Everything will be all right. I assure you. In any case, I wish to see him immediately. He rose up from his seat, still wearing a mask of anger. I'm afraid I can't allow that. Sarutobi said, rising from his seat as well. Though his voice wasn't angry or harsh. The Raikage followed the suit and stood up as well. I have every right to see him and make sure he's all right, Raza replied in a snarl. Given his status, you should be aware of. The Sandaime hummed, folding his hands together behind his back. I really should. Just as you should have told us that, and warned us of his unstable mind. So they knew as well. But Mabui was truthful when she reported to me. The Raikage mused inwardly. He may be a bit detached, but he is of the stable mind, I assure you. Sarutobi snorted. We all love to tell lies to ourselves. To deceive ourselves, but also to console ourselves. To make the reality more pleasing. His smile then turned into a neutral frown. I ask you once again to sit down, and leave my shinobi to heal your son, Kazekage-dono. And based on what do you think you have a right to order me around? Raza snarled once again, his eyes shooting a murderous look towards the Sandaime Hokage. Have those two gone insane? Samui asked Darui, who was completely serious now. None of his laid-back attitude was present as he stared at the other two Kages. I really don't know. Darui said. The Raikage knew very well that the Tsunabudged was cut almost in half by their daimyo. And that he passed many missions that would usually be given to Tsunagakure to Konoha. That must be the cause of their argument. Though, why haven't they talked about it before? As Raikage though about the other reason for the antagonistic talk in front of him, white feathers started falling down, among the 3 Kages and their bodyguards. Based on the fact that the game is over. The Sandaime said, his tone now fully neutral. And his 2 guards almost ready to attack. The white feathers around the 6 of them dispersed. Genjutsu. The Raikage said in a raspy voice, flaring his chakra and blowing off the feathers away from him. Game? Raza had a fake smile on his face. I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Hokage Dono. Oh, Sarutobi said, faking a surprise, and then releasing a short chuckle. I'm sure you do. And then the gold sand from Raza's Kage robes started flowing out, charging towards the Sandaime, and in turn, towards him as well. Feathers. Temari said, looking at the entire arena as they covered it while falling down. That's the signal. But what should we do when they took Gaara away? Kankuro said, looking at her with a frown on his face. I don't know, Kankuro. We should go and ask Baka-sensei. He only nodded, but as they were about to jump over the railings of the stand, Temari saw black and red eyes. 3 Tomo circling around, and it paralyzed her completely. Sharingan. Temari quickly returned to her senses, but once she turned back, she saw her brother standing still. And Uchiha Sasuke holding a kunai beneath his neck. No! She shouted. A fear of losing her brother overtook her. Konoha might have already took Gaara away, she did not want to lose another brother as well. Don't move. The Uchiha replied coldly, looking straight at her with his onyx eyes, almost as if he was piercing through her body with a poisonous blade. Temari gulped once before she spoke with a tremor in her voice. Please, please don't kill him. But she instinctively moved back. And once she said and did that, Uchiha Sasuke simply cut the throat of her brother and the blood began pouring out on all sides. She felt as if Kankuro's blood got into her widened from horror eyes, as everything suddenly got red and black. The rage overtook her horror and fear, and she charged towards the Uchiha, intending on killing him with her battle fan. Orders to spare and capture him were on the end of her head now. All she cared about was revenge. But once she took a step forward, darkness started taking over the edges of her eyes, all until she could see nothing or feel nothing. Uchiha, what the fuck do you think you're doing to them? Karui shouted from the bottom of her lungs. Sasuke looked at her with an annoyed look, and she flinched slightly, looking away and not saying anything else. Nothing that you should be concerned yourself with, he said to her. The Sand siblings laid on the ground knocked out. First Kankuro and then Temari, who was busy being paralyzed in his genjutsu while he took care of her brother. It was not a hard task to do. He only had to look at her with his fully matured Sharingan to paralyze her. And to stuck a poisonous needle into her brother while she was distracted. Naruto's quick victory against Gaara must have shocked them to the core. Sasuke snorted inwardly. Actually, we do have a right to know why are you doing this? Ni Yujito said to him with a frown on her face. She had a bit more courage. Even the other boy, Omoi, looked like he was ready for battle, if his half-drawn sword was any indication. It's the invasion. That's what's happening. The invasion? Yujito repeated. But you might want to talk to your Kage about that, and stay away while you're at it. Sasuke cut her off, while he at the same time began tying down his 2 captives. The still posture of the other genins made him frown as well. Unless you're part of the invasion as well? He was told that the chances of it were low, but that he should be alert all the same. What? Karui shouted again, regaining her posture, pointing her hand accusingly at him. No, we're not. We wouldn't do that. And who is invading you anyway? Can't be just Suna. The two ANBUs he did not know appeared in the booth. Sasuke did not answer her. Nice work, kid. We'll take it over from here. Sasuke nodded to one of them. Before they left, two ANBUs looked at Kumo Genins who were still unsure what to do. Eventually, Yujito spoke first. Omoi, Karui. Let's go and find Mabui Sensei and meet up with Rika Jessima. They both nodded to her and then left. The ANBUs then left as well, taking the Sand siblings with them, as Sasuke was left standing alone in the finalist booth. He walked towards the railings and looked over the arena, which was silent as the night, barring the occasional clashes of steel that eventually stopped. The white feathers have long disappeared as well. Looking over towards the walls of the village, Sasuke saw that they were still intact and that no smoke could be seen on the buildings inside. So they haven't breached in. He smiled at the sudden surge of pride in his village and the vigilance to keep the invaders at bay. But as he looked at the distance, he saw his teammate, Naruto, from the corner of his eyes jumping up the walls of the section of the arena where the noblemen were stationed, and above in booth which the Kages sat. Not having any other mission to do, Sasuke went to join him. Once his genjutsu has been cast, Naruto went to join the old man as he was ordered to do. He was given a mission to cast that genjutsu on the entire arena, yesterday. As apparently there were no signs of Orochimaru. And it was suggested he might back off from the entire invasion if he found out his right hand was captured. And he apparently did found out about Kabuto's capture. Naruto thought. I was never told what happened to that Kabuto in the end. Dead most likely. If they extracted the information from him, then there was no need to keep him alive any longer. As the Temple of Nirvana was pretty unknown to the rest of the shinobi population, Naruto was chosen to perform it. And perform it well he did. He soon reached the roof of the highest building where he found the three Kages and their bodyguard standing. The Hokage and the Kazekage stood opposite of each other, their robes flowing in the wind as they stared at one another. The Raikage was standing on the lower edge of the roof. His two bodyguards standing beside him. Naruto barely spared them a glance. Mission accomplished, Hokage-sama. Naruto said neutrally as he joined up beside him. Loud enough for others to hear. But his voice carried a certain flicker of joy. The old man spared him a smile, along with the words of praise. A job well done, Naruto-kun. He could hear Genma and Rado snorting behind them. Kazekage only stared at them with hate-filled eyes. The Sandaime turned towards Raza once again. It seems that my old student really has deserted your cause once his spies were discovered. What? Raza asked back. The old man ignored his question, only continued talking. I'm saying that the shinobi of the Sound Village are not dying in the forests of the Land of Fire as we speak, Kazekage Dono. Once he found out his spies were discovered in Konoha, Orochimaru probably decided to fully back off from the invasion and rearrange his plans. If you knew, why didn't you say anything to us? A foolish question came from Raza's mouth. His eyes bulged with anger and resentment. Naruto was glad that he was not in his skin. You always presented yourself as a paragon of virtue, as a man of peace. Why did you let it escalate it all the way here if you knew about the invasion? Your men died as well. Naruto immediately closed his eyes as he heard those last words. He did not want to dwell on them. To teach you a lesson. Sarutobi immediately replied back. And to teach everyone else a lesson not to mess Konoha in the future. Orochimaru hoped you would weaken us as much as you could, but how far was he from the truth? He never expected for you two to defeat us. Least of all if you attacked us alone. All he wanted was to kill me in his foolish quest for jealousy-filled revenge. Many more Konoha ninjas began appearing on the roof. Among them, Kakashi Sensei and Uncle Jiraiya. The only additional support that Kazekage got was Baki, a Jonin Sensei to his children. Naruto could see the traces of blood all over the lower part of his body. Baki! Raza all but shouted. Where are Kankuro and Temari? Baki looked at all the men that have surrounded them from all sides. I don't know, Kazekage-sama. They may have fled. Konoha also placed 4 ninjas around me to capture me as soon as the battle started. Baki must have killed those 4 ninjas. Naruto turned his head around and saw Sasuke smirking, but otherwise saying nothing. At least he accomplished his goal. I'm glad to see they have failed in at least that. Raza returned his gaze towards the Sandaime, but he also looked at Naruto. Your men have either died or fled back to Suna, kid. Jiraiya said, crossing his arms. It's best if you surrender. Raza did not even pay attention to him. Surrender now and end this foolishness, Kazekage-dono. The Hokage said to him. There is no need to spill blood any longer. Raza clenched his teeth and then bit his lip so hard that a trail of blood could be seen, dripping down his mouth. As if. He only said, his gold dust flying over his bodyguards as they disappeared in the wind. Konoha Shinobi went to follow, but the voice of their leader stopped their pursuit. Let him go. Sarutobi said with a stern tone, his eyes following the direction of the wind where Raza fled. It is a foolish notion to chase after him. Naruto stood beside him, and watched as well, while his sensory ability was able to detect the disgraced Kazekage still being in the village. Although fleeing further and further away. Maybe they could catch up to him if they were fast enough. Let him go. The old man said again, although in a quiet tone, so only he could hear. We'll deal with him some other time. The plans have changed. He purposely let him escape. Naruto understood. If that was his strategy, then so be it. He learned until now that he should not question him or his decision when it came to the protection of the village. They had his children, so Kazekage would be less inclined to wage an all-out war against them. Even with his failed invasion, Naruto was sure that he lost only a fraction of his troops. And that he still had many more men under his command. Dozens of Konoha ninjas were gathered around the roof. Kumogakure group looking out of place as they watched the spectacle with uncertain eyes. The Raikage, his bodyguards, Kumo Genins, and even Mabui was there. But none of them knew what the future would bring. The Raikage only watched the old man and him. His eyes were narrowed down, and his nostrils fuming with rage. Or was it a normal breathing for him? Let him rage for whatever reason he wishes. Naruto mused inwardly, while the Sandaime gave a victory speech to all the men around him. Who cheered in return. Konoha won today. Mabui looked at only him, uncertainty in her emerald green eyes. Visible. Naruto only spared her a smile. This failed invasion showed what would happen if others dared to invade them. If any of their future allies dared to betray them. The invaders were crushed, and the potential ones would be warned not to repeat their mistakes. And now it was time to mourn for the dead. Outskirts of Konoha, November 1st, where the hell are Otogakure's shinobi? Satetsu, the commanding jonin of the Suna invading forces, asked. He was a bald man, with a neatly trimmed beard on his strong jaw, that was the only hair on his head. The rest was clean as the summer sun in the land of wind. They were standing among the greenery of the land of fire. The endless trees protected them from being seen too soon. But that won't be of much use if they were not joined by their collaborators in this operation. Our scouts haven't spotted any of them, Otoke said to him, coming from behind. A man with wild, and spiky dark brown hair. He was the second in command of the Suna forces in this invasion. Satetsu turned his head to the other side and spat on the ground, his muscular face turning into an angry snarl. Useless idiots, he spoke lowly, crossing his arms and closing his eyes. I knew we should not have allied ourselves with them. This whole operation is a disaster. He was against this involvement with Orochimaru, but he did not object his displeasure to the Kazekage. It is for the greater good after all. Satetsu tried to convince himself. Kazekage's role is to lead the village. Mine is to obey him. His biggest concern was the lack of communication they had with Otogekure in the past few weeks. Only occasional message would arrive, when they should strike, and the easiest and fastest route to the village from where they should attack. It is too hard to cross the rival nations to deliver a message. And the messenger bird could be easily shot down. Their Kazekage reasoned. While on a few occasions some white-haired man stood behind him. His emotionless, cold, and evil eyes were something that he would never forget. One of Orochimaru's henchmen. Satetsu did not believe for a second that it was too hard for Orochimaru to deliver a message, but he mused that the Kazekage was just too cautious of being discovered by any Konoha sympathizers or spies in the village. We have never discovered a single one though. And they were too cautious to prepare the men that would participate in the invasion. Months of planning were spent on that, and only a single minute could bring all that to ruin if they were discovered. So, what are we to do now? Otokase asked him. Uncertainty was written all over his face. It doesn't seem like they'll join us anytime soon. Satetsu did not answer him immediately but only looked behind them towards their men who were kneeling among the trees, concealing their position. Gritting his teeth in anger, Satetsu answered. We'll proceed as we planned. You mean for us to attack the village without their support? Do I have any other choice? The signal could be given any time soon. I'd rather have us catch Konoha off guard. I'm sure we will be able to beat them. Maybe Orochimaru will join us with his men soon as well. And if they don't? Otokase continued in a low sound. Worry was written all over his face. You plan to abandon Kazekage now, are you? Satetsu questioned him, but with no ill intention. Luckily, his friend did not take the offense. Let's just wait for 10 more minutes, then we'll begin the summoning. At least that maggot gave us that. A summoning formula for one of his giant snakes. His friend nodded, turning towards their men and motioning for a summoning team to prepare. I hope Gaara doesn't screw this up, somehow. Yeah. You never know with that kid. He said in a distant tone, turning his gaze towards the distant walls of Konoha. They're pretty tall. But, those snakes should do their work. They were positioned far enough from the walls, where there were no patrols. Though, those high walls could still be seen very well by his men. Satetsu originally thought that they would simply go behind the hills. But their Kazekage had said that Konoha had even stronger defenses behind. With endless traps, and even more patrols that could foil their assault. IWA has learned that lesson the hard way when they thought to attack the Leaf in the Second War. Orochimaru was apparently very suggestive when he said that attacking the walls directly was the best path to Konoha's destruction. By killing everyone in our path. Women, children, elderly. No matter the age. All had to die. The notion itself made a disgusting feeling appear in his mouth. But he tried to convince himself that Konoha had asked for it when they took the part in crippling Suna's military budget and economy. The morale of the men is not particularly high. Otokase commented with a frown. Not surprising, he replied. When 8 old geezers killed nearly 50 of our men, I'd be surprised if morale was at the top. On the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Rivers, the Suna forces had clashed with 2 Konoha teams and the long miles of their traps. Though they managed to bypass most of them, he lost at least 50 of his men in subsequent skirmishes and the traps they did not avoid. His rage had only increased when he saw that it was a bunch of old bones with one leg in their graves already, that were responsible for the deaths of his men. Konoha must have placed them there because they thought that no serious invasion would pass from that direction. How wrong they were. Suna did the same for patrols on their south and west. But not in the east and the north. And yet they still did considerable damage. Still. Otoke sounded unsure. Don't fret about it, my friend, Setetsu said to him, patting him on the shoulder. Once the battle starts, no fear will be present. There won't be a place for one. His friend smirked at him. If you say so. Minutes quickly passed, and Setetsu gave a signal for the summoning team to begin their ritual. As they settled into their position, Setetsu ranted once again, looking at the sky above. That useless Orochimaru. Seems we'll have to start without them. If only we brought more men, they were still left with at least 1,500 men. Nearly a third of Suna's total forces. They planned to rely on Gaara and Otogekyu's ninjas to finish off the leaf for good. Hopefully, Gaara will create enough chaos for us to simply finish the job. And if not? His friend began with a smile. Then we'll only have to rely on our superior fighting skills to beat the leaf, the bald commander finished with a smirk, trying to lift the mood. A few men around him snickered as he said that. A large group of the enemy shinobi is approaching from the village at a fast rate, sir. One of the censors shouted frantically to him. What? He and Otokes turned their heads towards Konoha, only seeing a barrage of kunai flying towards them. Setetsu pushed his friend back while he also jumped to avoid being killed. The kunai killed 3 of his ninjas that stood behind them. Stick by your teams and get into the defensive positions. He barely managed to give the order as a sea of green uniforms swarmed the trees above them. His men scattered to do as he ordered. Setetsu hid behind a tree, his eyes moving wildly, looking at the enemies that are overwhelming them. His mind ran wild, trying to think of the reason why did this happen. And how did this happen? Has Orochimaru tricked us into invading Konoha? Is he still loyal to them? Is Kazekage-sama safe? Setetsu felt his body frozen. He couldn't move either his legs or hands. His eyes managed to see a long, snake-like shadow, connecting his own with that of another Konoha shinobi, with a short black ponytail, and a half-bored, a half-serious look on his face. Anara. Shit. Then another Konoha ninja appeared in front of him. His hair was long and orange, but the tanto in his hand was pointed towards Setetsu's heart. But at the last moment, as Konohanan was about to kill him, Otokes appeared, cutting the head of his attacker, and sending few exploding kunai towards the Naranon. Releasing Setetsu from his trap. Nara, however, evaded his attack, as 2 of his other men charged towards him to finish Otokes' job. Thank you. What are we to do now? Otokes practically shouted, ignoring his bewilderment. He may not have heard his gratitude from the sound of battle around them. The screams of the dead men. Shouts of alive men. And steel clashing with steel. We fight. That's what we'll do. He said with all the conviction he could muster. They had no choice. He pulled out his short battle fan and prepared for battle. Whether or not Oto joins us. Whether or not we get killed or captured here, we cannot desert Kazekage-sama at this moment. Setetsu did not hear his friend's answer as he jumped towards the 2 Konohanans that were charging at him. He gathered his chakra in his fingers, and the moment he got close enough to the 2 charging men, Setetsu delivered his attack. Blade of Wind. Once he killed them, he heard the sound of something crashing to the ground behind him. And the dusty cloud soon enveloped him in its hug. Some of his men gathered around him in the meantime. Setetsu covered his head with his hands before the dust settled. Some of the trees were broken from their root. But in the distance, a gigantic light blue and brown frog could be seen, with the dust still clearing away from it. Oh, for fuck's sake. He muttered, breathing heavily and fuming with rage. It couldn't be anyone else but the Toad Sage. And once again, another foolish Konohanan charged at him. But Setetsu barely paid him attention. as he quickly grabbed him by his throat, crushing it with the strength he could muster. After which he threw his body to the other side. The blood from the man's mouth got splattered all over his face. There is no way we can win, he realized as he watched the carnage around him. Only sounds of steels could be heard, and occasional movements of shinobi could be seen. But the result of the ambush was visible. The men were scattered and they lost their momentum. They planned to release Gaara's Biju in the middle of Konoha, but Konoha summoned a gigantic toad in the counterattack against them. If we even had the chance in the first place. There were many more of his men lying dead than those of Konohanans. A lone tear of sweat dripped down his head, as one important thought crossed his mind as someone shouted, in a fruitless attempt to raise the spirit of Suninans, a wavering war cry. For the Kazakage-sama. Fuck the Kazakage-sama. One of the men that gathered around him said in fear, before jumping off, with the intention to escape. Completely ignoring the shout Satetsu had heard. Their already low morale crumbled at this sight of the failure all around. The words must have escaped from that man before he even realized he had said them. Fuck the Kazakage-sama, indeed. The previous loyalty he had in that moment was swept away by the catastrophe in front of his eyes. He did not openly object and the notion to attack the leaf was presented on the table, but he would not let his fellow Suninans to die pointlessly due to the foolishness of his Kage. Konohagakure no Sato, the cemetery, November 5. Losing one's biological parents could be a reason for a person to crack down and go insane. Or for a person to experience a loss so great that it would change his worldview, his personality forever. But losing something that he never actually had, or experienced, was not a great loss to Naruto. That is where he admired Sasuke. He admired him for remaining sane and normal, despite everything he went through. Despite everything he lost. He still stood firm, on both of his legs. Naruto could remember crying only 3 times in his life. All were for a good reason and were unavoidable to his feelings and emotions. Despite having a hard life, either back in the orphanage or since he became a shinobi. The interlude between those two was actually the happiest time of his life. No worries from the outside, a genuine childhood life for someone like him. Even if he was forced to become an adult back in the orphanage and skip the usual childhood that the children had. When he was 3 years old, he had to learn to wipe his own ass, for no caretaker in the orphanage would do that to him. He learned how to make his own bed. And even his own food. All before the age of 6. He was forced to grow up. Sometimes, he did not know how he managed to do all that. Was it because of his blood or the 7 lucky gods who gave their blessings and protection? The answer did not matter at all, at the end of the day. For the past was past, and nothing would change it. Though, a little change, no matter how little, could have a far bigger impact than some larger things in this world. His tears always signified a change. A change for him. A change in him. The day he found out about who his parents actually were, and what he was, his life changed completely. The day Tazuna and his family died, the second change. But the day he learned about Uncle Kosuke going on a suicide mission to protect the village, he wasn't sure if anything changed. It wasn't anyone else's fault but his, though Naruto couldn't completely blame the man either. His surrogate uncle always sacrificed himself for the sake of the village. Naruto knew that his goal was to die to protect his comrades. Uncle Kosuke volunteered to be a part of the team that was to guard the border of the Land of Fire towards the west, from where the invasion from the sand would come. It was his own decision, and none else's. Just as the other elderly men who died in that attack chose their end themselves. So a younger shinobi wouldn't have to be the victims of Suna's treachery. As he was kneeling alone by Kosuke's gravestone, with the other villagers already leaving after mourning their dead, Naruto did not fight the tears from falling freely for the 4th time in his life. Noon would see him, and he was free to do it. He was a human being like everyone else. Knowing about the death of his parents was nothing compared to this. For he had no memories of them. Seeing the cold and pale body of the man who raised him being brought to Konoha changed something in Naruto. His prosthetic leg was not with him, only the sword in his hand and dozens of cuts over his chests and other parts of his body. He experienced a feeling he never felt before. Even if he previously knew about his suicidal mission, and the eventual result of the same. Knowing about his eventual death made it somewhat easier to say goodbye. And think it would be easier when this moment would come. Though his sadness was still there, it was slowly overtaken by the anger. He clenched his teeth. Damn them. By the hatred. He clenched them harder. Hatred towards both Tsunegakure and Otogakure. Even if the latter did not take part in the invasion. Only the former did. They chickened out at the last moment. A part of him wished that they attacked as well. Just so they could be crushed along with Konoha's former allies. Even the thoughts of sneaking into the ANBU headquarters and killing the Sand siblings crossed his mind. For blood had to be repaid. But the memory of his surrogate uncle prevented those ideas from dwelling too long in his head. Uncle Kosuke would not want him to go on a vengeful streak. The only thing he was left from him were the memories and tanto that he used. Naruto stayed at the cemetery until the night fell completely. Reminiscing of the past, and thinking of the future. He would not want me to mourn for too long. He smiled sadly as he traced his fingers over Kosuke's name on the tombstone. He already cried his tears when he found out about his decision. There was no need for him to cry more. But wishes don't always come true, and he simply stopped resisting his natural intuition. The Hokage's Tower, November 7th. The Great Council meeting to discuss the aftermath of the failed invasion was to be today. 7 days after the invasion. When the dead were buried, and the enemy was fully routed from the Land of Fire. Naruto learned that Konoha had lost 87 shinobi in the invasion. 8 border guards, Uncle Kosuke among them, and 4 men in the arena who were meant to capture Baki, the right hand of the Kazekage. While the rest were killed outside the walls of the village. Tsunegakure shinobi had put up a fierce resistance to their counter-ambush. And it cost them dearly. Though the enemy has lost 566 men. With an additional 112 being captured. The rest fled, along with their Kazekage. He was allowed to flee. Naruto reminded himself. He did not know the real reason why he was allowed to do so. But, the words of the old man were firm and final. Naruto did not try to contradict them. As the official head of the Senju clan, though only another member beside him remaining, Naruto sat on one of the futons in the large room meant for the village council meetings. He sat on the far right side of the room, in the last row by the wall, a bit away from all eyes of the other people present. Both the clan heads and high-ranking jonins were present, along with the dignitaries of the various military departments of the village's forces. From ANBU's and Hunterine Division to the Torture and Interrogation Division and Medical Corps, and many others. Aside from them, there was a group of civilian representatives, sitting on the far left side of the room. All dressed neatly in the traditional Konoha clothes to signify their belonging to the village. The fire daimyo with members of his court who were at the village, were present as well. They were seated behind a large table which was used by the Hokage and the 3 village elders. From one point of view, it shows that he is the lord of the Land of Fire, but Naruto doubted that he would have a final word here. And that would show who was actually the power in the village. Naruto saw Jiraiya standing on the other side of the room and leaning against the wall. Not sitting like everyone else did. He had a half-bored, half-serious face. Something unpleasant may happen. For Naruto knew that his godfather hated these kinds of meetings. Some elements of seriousness should be a warrant for anyone who knew him, what the real situation was. And that the real war was far from over. He must be annoyed that the opportunity to finish off Orochimaru for good was missed. Naruto hasn't talked much with Jiraiya in the aftermath of the invasion. Or anyone else for that matter. Mostly secluding himself, he spent the majority of his time alone. Either at the cemetery or his home. Reading, and trying to relax his mind. Sasuke was seated next to him, wearing his usual all-black clothes with his clan symbol on his back. Unlike him, Naruto dressed himself in a short dark gray male kimono, with black pants and a white rope around his waist. He was grateful to Sakura for sewing his clan's symbol on the back of some of his clothes when he asked her to do it. In addition to the regular ninjas we have captured, we also have Raza's children in our custody. The old man said, his voice gruff and tired, while his long speech and report of everything that has transpired, stretched on. The fate of the Kazekage's children was something that everyone in the room was curious about. Including Naruto. Gaara can't be imprisoned forever. That much was clear to him. But he did not know about the plans that the old man and his elders had for the enemy Jinchuriki. Murmurs across the room had immediately spread like a forest fire. And even the question regarding Gaara's tailed beast crossed Naruto's ears. Unlike the rest of the pointless blabbering, that one did not exit on the other side. Hokage-sama. A stern, deep and mature male voice was heard on the other side of the room amidst all of the hushed talk. Naruto's eyes moved to the upper left part of the room from where the voice came. Hayashisan, Sarutobi replied, and the murmurs immediately stopped. Naruto noticed that the man in question was Hinata's father and the head of the Hyuga clan. It seems that no one dares to speak behind the Hyuga leader's back. He mused at the general silence that was present at that moment. Previously we were told that the son of the Kazekage-sama is a Jinchuriki of the Ichibi, but we were not told what will happen to him once the invasion is over, and he is captured. The low voices in the room rose once more, however, now even higher, despite the status of the man that was speaking. It was also harder to comprehend what the people were saying. Only one thing, however, passed through Naruto's ears. Are we going to extract his tailed beast? Was the question that was on the lips of many ninjas in the room. Fat fucking chance. Naruto instinctively thought, releasing a minor fume down his nostrils, his blue eyes turning to ice, but he said nothing. In any case, he would not allow to have another Jinchuriki in the village. He would not allow for another child to carry that burden. One Biju in Konoha's property was more than enough. Garrison, along with his siblings, will remain in our custody for the time being, just to keep his father in line until everything is settled. All the while we focus on dealing with Orochimaru and that front. The Sandaime said after a brief pause, his eyes closed and voice carrying no place for an argument. Are we not going to extract his beast from him and take it as our own? Another man, who probably did not understand it, asked. People were still wondering. Being left in the dark was not something that many enjoyed when there was a chance to switch the light with one simple step. Naruto remained silent as he waited for the old man to reply. Of course. The Sandaime replied with a smile on his face, yet it did not carry the generous mirth like when he was in presence of those close to him. Provided I have a volunteer among some of you, or your children for that matter. It is said that the young make the best Jinchurikis. He replied sharply. No one suggested extracting the tailed beast again. Senju had to bite his lower lip to avoid doing something inappropriate, like laughing. That shut them up. Naruto saw Danzo remaining oddly still. Not questioning the Hokage on his decision for even a second. His calm posture was almost unnerving. He must have told him his decisions already. Hokage-sama. Another man with short, light brown hair, raised his hand, somewhere in the middle of the room. Onikumasan. The Hokage gave him a nod to continue. Hokage-sama, he formally bowed once more, before asking the question. Will we officially declare the war against Otogakure, since no formal declaration came from their side? As we do know that Orochimaru is behind the creation of that village, just like the entire invasion was his plan all along. Naruto wondered the same. If it came to the actual war, no doubt that Konoha would come out on top. And that the newly formed village would be defeated. But the road always had the opposite direction. No matter how far you could go. If things went badly, by any chance, a larger war with the other nations could erupt. Greater villages like Iwa or Kumo, perhaps even Kiri, would not sit idly and watch as Konoha and the Land of Fire gained more land, power, and influence. Smaller villages usually served as a buffer zone between Konoha on one side, and Kumo and Iwa to the north on the other. But the Sound Village was strategically worthless, unimportant in the larger scale of things, and would only bring more weight on Konoha's back should they destroy them, and annex the entire country. We shall send them a verbal note, first. To the heads of the clans that lived in the land of rice paddies, or the land of sound as it is now known, demanding that they hand us Orochimaru. Since we do know he is behind the formation of their village. If they refuse, we shall have an all-out war. It is better to avoid deaths from both sides if it is possible, but if not. He paused for a second or two. I have faith in our shinobi to handle one late, minor village. The Hokage did not give more reasoning, but the others seemingly understood what he meant by it. Or simply opted to stay silent. It was not the time to talk about it. It was a bit strange to him that no one asked about the prisoners of war and their fate. But looking around at the faces of the people present, Naruto understood why. Many men and women here have survived the Third Great Ninja War, and they most likely knew what would happen to them. They would either be executed or ransomed if something could be gained from the latter. Naruto was not sure how he should feel about that either. The current captives would have killed every man, woman, and child of his village without reservations if they had the chance to do so, just a week ago. Somehow, knowing that, made it all easier for him to accept it if it came to the former choice of two. What would Uncle Kosuke think about that? He knew the man very well. He opposed his decision to kidnap the Amigakura's genins in the second round. But this was the result of the war. His opinion could go either way. Before we continue any further, I believe we have some promotions to take care of, first. The old man said, smiling genuinely as he looked towards his and Sasuke's direction. Naruto-kun, Sasuke-kun. Approach. A promotion was the last thing on Naruto's mind. The loss, despair because of it, paranoia. All three took a heavy toll on him for the past few months. Thoughts of protecting the village came first into his mind that he did not even think about a new rank and its benefit. The death of Uncle Kosuke was a final blow. All of that made him forget about the good things in life. About his dreams. And about his future. Sasuke was the first to stand up. Not even looking back to see if Naruto was following him. The eyes of the other people in the room followed each of their steps over the wooden floor. A goofish smile from the feudal lord, contrary to the cold and calculative gazes of the other shinobi present. Both the clan heads and regular ninjas eyed them. But Naruto's thoughts did not dwell on them. As he approached the table, standing firm in front of the Hokage, Naruto spared a small smile as he was handed the plastic bag with the Chunin vest in it. Smiling genuinely for the first time since the applause he got from the audience in the finals. On the vest itself was a sheet of paper filled with a long wall of text that he did not bother reading at the moment. An instruction and introduction to our new duties most likely. After reviewing your record from the past months and suggestion of your Jonin Sensei, Hatake Kakashi. But also for your deeds in the exams and the subsequent invasion. The Council of Elders has decided to promote you to the rank of Chunin. The Hokage said to them. Sasuke took the bag into his hands and inspected it, thoroughly. He did not seem too enthusiastic on the outside. But looking more closely, he could see an unfamiliar spark in the Uchiha's onyx eyes. Somehow, Naruto was glad that his teammate found some semblance of happiness in his life. Even if he did not get the chance to shine much in the past months, Naruto knew that Sasuke deserved his promotion. Capturing the Sand siblings with ease should be enough to show everyone what he is capable of. Naruto took that chance to see the reaction of the other three elders. But Koharu and Hamura were as they were. Calculative and neutral, while Danzo did not bother looking at them. His one eye closed, and his head turned to the rest of the people in the room. "Thank you, Hokage-sama," both of them said in unison. The old man nodded and bid them to go back to their seats, which they did. As they settled back, the Sandaime began speaking once again, listing a short list of names of the various Chunins that would receive a promotion as well, due to their actions in the invasion and the career. Listing all of their accomplishments in the process. "Does this mean our time as a team is over?" Sasuke asked in a whisper, not even looking up from his vest. "It doesn't need to," Naruto replied, equally in a low sound. "We will probably have many more joint missions. We did work well together, after all." A faint smile appeared on Sasuke before it turned to normal. Speaking of Team 7. A 10 or so seconds passed before the Uchiha spoke again. Naruto raised his eyebrow at his silence. "How are you dealing with your caretaker's death?" No matter when he showed it, but Naruto would always feel surprised by Sasuke's curiosity. "I don't know how I would describe it." He did not. He felt as if thousands of conflicting emotions boiled up in his body when he thought about it. And everything felt heavy because of it. "A word of advice, Naruto," Sasuke said, while still looking towards the Sandaime and his elders. "You already knew he was going to die on that mission. It is much easier to come to terms that way. I did not know him as well as you did, but I do think he would not want you to mourn for too long. He lost much more than me, perhaps I should heed his advice." "Thank you," he said to Sasuke, probably for the first time in his life. A Senju thanking the Uchiha. Where is this world going? He did not stop a smile from appearing on his face as he thought about it. Naruto took the time to look at his new vest, even if he would not wear it that often during his missions. Members of the clans had the right and liberty to wear the uniforms and gear that were approved by the high-ranking members of the Jonin Council. His ancestor wore armor, even when he was not a Hokage, but a regular shinobi of the village. There was no reason why he couldn't, and shouldn't do the same. Before we end this meeting, there is one final, and important matter to discuss. The Sandaime said after he finished the listing of the other promoted ninjas. Naruto could see his head moving in the direction where Hayashi and a few other members of the Hyuga clan sat. That clan does have many high-ranking shinobi. So much so that 5 of them are in this meeting. An hour before this meeting, the Yondaime Raikage has presented us with an offer of a defensive alliance. Naruto could almost feel the tension that was rising in the room once those words were spoken. It was not a secret that many in Konoha disliked and hated Kyomogakure. Some with the burning passion. That is, in case of the war we should come to each other's aid. Noon dared to interrupt him. Yet. I have already decided to accept his offer. Our ambassador to their village will be decided in the following weeks. He finished, now looking across the room and gauging the reaction from the rest. Most importantly, the reaction of the Hyuga clan. Even in his old age, the old man still commanded respect. So much, that Noon dared to start an all-out uproar. Not yet at least. He exchanged eye contact with Sasuke, who, despite everything, understood that this was an unorthodox approach. Naruto leaned his head a bit forward while resting his hands on his legs, just to see the reaction from the Hyuga group. But all he saw was the bitter frown on their faces and a sharp line of the eyebrow from Hayashi's side. They're not happy with this. And he wasn't sure if he should be happy about it either. He had his reasons to dislike Kyomogakure. Mostly for the part they had in Uzushio's destruction. However, that was not the reason why Naruto was against this new alliance. Suna, another great village, proved itself treasonous. And Konoha had a much smaller enmity with them in the past than they did with Kumo. Who is to say that Kumogakure wouldn't try to do the same, even if they were a witness of the failed invasion? Who is to say that they won't try to have another episode of the Hyuga affair? Or try something similar like they tried to do with his mother? All of that was the least of his concerns. Naruto wanted to travel the world a bit more, and the offer Jiraiya presented him was an excellent opportunity to do so. Because of the invasion, and the fact that Orochimaru still walked freely in this world, his plans would have to be put on hold. As well as the trip he planned to the supposed colonies of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto looked at Jiraiya, who was silent as the night. His narrowed eyes were moving from both the Hokage and the members of the Hyuga clan, back and forth. Naruto was not the only one who shared the sentiment of the Hyugas, as another voice rose in a few rows in front of him, in form of a shout. You cannot be serious about forming the alliance with them, Hokage-sama. Surely, you haven't forgot about the destruction of the Uzushio or the death of Hyuga Hizashi. Someone voiced his concerns. In any other village, such an outburst would get the man killed. But the old man was generally forgiving and knew how to curb the anger of others. And that was his greatest weapon. I should not meddle here. Not that there was a chance for him, or anyone else, to influence this decision. If Hokage wanted it, the rest could only accept. A few more shouts of support came for the man, while the Sandaime remained calm. Almost as if he was letting them vent out their anger. But, his wrinkled old face would not budge. Naruto could see that. His mouth were fused together, and his eyes were closed, while he nodded occasionally as if he was confirming all their arguments. He did not forget. And yet, he still accepted the Raikage's offer. It was all too strange. But in the end, what better way was there to monitor someone than to have a constant, yet safe, presence among him? A shame they did not have an ambassador with Tsunagakure. Perhaps all the troubles could have been avoided before it escalated to the boiling point. And Uncle Kosuke may have lived in that case. Naruto bit his lower lip, as he bitterly thought about his death. This is not a place to cry. Or to think about it. Sasuke was right. He said his goodbye to the man. There was no need to dwell in despair any longer. The tears can't bring back the dead. And the past cannot be rewritten. 3 hours later, the ANBU headquarters. Hiruzen walked down the stairs of the ANBU headquarters, inhaling smoke from his pipe along the way. Alone, aside from Danzo who walked not far behind him. He left his bodyguards behind at the entrance to the prison section of the underground base. Lights on the wall bulbs flickered as he walked. But, that was their entire point. A moment of life, and a moment of death for the prisoners who walked through this hallway. And any other hallway of their prisons. Being in such a place was meant to create an atmosphere that their fate could go either way. Albeit, there was only one prisoner in this case. The rest were in a separate building. Awaiting their fate. Each of their steps echoed through the empty hallway. The other cells were empty as well. Cleared, just because of the one prisoner. Gaara of the Sand. And they filled the space with nothing but silence. Not even a rat or a mouse could enter this part of the complex without permission. Only occasional delivery of the fresh air could. Aside from the selected group of people. After finishing the tedious council meeting he had with the representatives of the military, Sarutobi had decided to give the final blow to Raza for his betrayal. He just hoped it would go as he planned. And that the peace and balance would one day be restored. I suggest you to clear your court, de Maidono. For it seems that the leeches can thrive in the sand as well. Danzo repeated his words. Almost in a sarcastic tone, and Hiruzen momentarily stopped walking. Turning around, he faced his old rival with an unamused face. That was your greatest impression of the past few days? I must say, I'm disappointed. Sarutobi said to him in a half-sarcastic voice. Not the 2-hour argument I just had with the Hyuga clan and their supporters? Why should it be? Danzo said to him, his chin rising slightly. His attempt to look at him from above. The moment you have told me before the council meeting began, of your decisions, I knew there was no place for me to say anything. Once you get something in your head, only death can get it out. Danzo paused as the two of them stared at each other. But whose death will it be, Hiruzen? Death of a few more academy students? Or of the village itself? So he goes for the way I initially handled Naruto-kun before that incident at the playground. He hasn't spoken with the boy since the funeral for the dead shinobi, with Kosuke being among them. Thinking of his dead friend brought a feeling of sadness to Hiruzen's being. But he would not falter before Danzo. And why is my advice for the Wind Daimyo so memorable to you? Hiruzen forced a smile on his face, ignoring Danzo's disagreement, and his arguments. Truly, he never felt better than when he argued with him. The man has been an annoying thorn in his side ever since he took the mantle of a Hokage, but also his most valuable ally. Despite the differences between them. It left an impression on me, that you are so foolish to think, that the Wind Daimyo will understand what you meant by it. Especially when you are quoting some literature. And that surprised me even more. I never took you for a reading type. Hiruzen hummed. It was a possibility that the feudal lord of the Land of Wind might not understand what he meant by it, but his fat younger brother and heir certainly did. Hiruzen deduced that from their meeting after the invasion. And if not, the Sandaime could make sure he understands his message, and every word I said. I read plenty of fascinating books in my spare time, Danzo. It wouldn't hurt you to try it sometimes. Sarutobi said. I do not count Jiraiya's porn books as a fascinating piece of literature, Danzo said, his lips morphing into a thin smile. Not in a good-hearted one. A book is a book, Hiruzen replied in a flat tone. And they are a beautiful piece of art, if I can say so myself. Prostitutes say something similar about their profession as well. I never took you for a brothel visiting type to know that. And for the record, that message comes directly from one of Jiraiya's books. There was a silence after that sentence, as Danzo did not insult back. Hiruzen, who was smoking from his pipe, exhaled smoke from his mouth, sending it directly into Danzo's face, but a simple flow of wind around his head dispersed the smoke into nothingness. I see your mastery of that element has not wavered at all these years. There was no reason for me to get rusty. He still looked at him with a half-smiling, half-disdainful eye. The point of the message. Danzo simply said again. A message. A message that he should clear his court of the worthless courtiers who did nothing but sour the relationship between Suna and their government. A deed of Orochimaru, and his bribes to the corrupt people surrounding the Wind Daimyo. His rogue student had planted the seeds of destroying the leaf, even before the truth of his experiments was officially revealed. How blind I was. Hiruzen sighed, before speaking in an emotionless tone, his thoughts returning to the matter at hand, the message. We need to have the Land of Wind and Sunagakure on our side again. One day, that is. Letting the Wind Daimyo know that there is something wrong with his court is just a first step of that. If the Fire Daimyo decided to cut Konoha's budget, Hiruzen would not hesitate to act in an instant. He would either be replaced with his supporter, talked out of that foolishness, or simply forced to go back to the previous state. Hiruzen was lucky that their feudal lord never embarked on a foolishness as his counterpart of the Land of Wind did. Having a constant guard of Konoha shinobi that guarded the daimyo, must have had an impact on anyone who tried to influence the man against his village. That still leaves Raza alive. Danzo continued in his harsh tone. He will be an obstacle to your goal in that case. So it makes me wonder why you let him flee so easily. Were you afraid of losing against a younger Kage? He asked with a sly smile. His only eye reeked of maliciousness. Do you really think I will let him live the rest of his days in peace? Releasing his children in a few months, and forgetting everything that has happened between us? Danzo was silent for a moment, as he looked at him with his lone, calculative eye. You are not the type of person that would execute the children, no matter who they may be. I don't see how else can you get rid of him, and keep Suna as a balancing force in the elemental nations, as you so desperately wish to do. Feeling the thinnest bits of sarcasm present in Shimura's voice, the sight of the Uchiha compound after the massacre flashed in front of Hiruzen's eyes, and for a moment his anger almost escaped from him before he managed to compose himself. Danzo did not pay attention to his reaction. Sarutobi had to release a low croaky laugh before he answered. Who said that I will be the one to get rid of him, Danzo? He did not speak more, as he turned around and continued walking towards the designated prison cell. Danzo did not move to follow right away, however. A low chuckle escaped his mouth, and his comment reached Hiruzen's ears, just as the explosions during the war would. Or the anguished cries of the dead and wounded on the battlefield. Even now I still get surprised when your mask slips away, old friend. Sarutobi felt no need to reply or interrupt him. But know this. Whatever I may be, Hiruzen. And whatever I ever was, at least I'm not a hypocrite. Danzo finished. So, that's how it is. Sarutobi thought to himself. A small smile almost appeared on his lips. Almost. The head of the Sarutobi clan stopped walking for a moment once more. The experience comes with age, it was said. And while both of them were of the same generation, they walked on different paths for nearly 50 years. And of those paths, Hiruzen's road had different directions that would always lead to the same destination. Sighing, he spoke. You would be. He grabbed his Hokage hat and firmly rearranged it on his head. If you wore this hat instead of me. He said nothing else as he continued walking further. Danzo did not press it any further. At least he's not against the future elimination of Raza. He thought as he walked further down the hall. He had someone in mind to get rid of the alliance breaker. But it was not the time. And it won't be for a long time. The greatest concern for Hiruzen regarding his elimination was that Suna should have a successor that would be loyal to Konoha. However, the successor to the position of the Kazekage had to be from one of the members of his clan. That is where Gaara comes to the picture. Gaara's prison cell wasn't that far down the hallway. Once he took another tour to the left, Hiruzen saw two ANBU guards standing in front of the door where Gaara was located. There were 6 more in the next room, resting, and waiting for their shifts to start. Or to act in case something went wrong. Hokage-sama. 2 ANBU men said as one voice. Bird and Snake. Hiruzen nodded to them, moving directly to the question at hand. Has the food been prepared for the prisoner? Bird nodded, walking to the side by the wall, where a little locker was hanging on the side. He pulled a plate with a modest amount of food on it. Thank you. Hiruzen only said, taking the plate, and proceeding to walk through the door which the other ANBU, Snake, opened for him. Danzo slowly followed. The doors closed once the two of them had entered. And a single light from the only bulb in the room created a circle in the center where Gaara sat. Better said, a chair on which he was tied. A few seals could be seen on his hands and body, just to be sure. While a series of bandages covered his right shoulder and the wound that Naruto-kun gave him. There was another chair in front of the boy, placed there for any warden that would come to feed him, until now. Gaara lifted his head and looked at him with an empty look in his eyes, before they scrunched a bit, looking at him with disdain. Have you finally come to end me? I must say I'm honored that the Hokage himself has come to do the deed. His voice was empty and hoarse. The boy couldn't complain, say that he was abused, while in Konoha custody. Certain repercussions had to be made, however. The sheer emptiness and apathy on the other hand amazed Hiruzen, no matter how vile the notion itself seemed to him. You messed up this one to no end, Raza. Fear not, my boy, Sarutobi said to him, in a voice he would use when he talked to either Naruto, or his grandson, Konohamaru. No harm shall come to you. His eyes were filled with suspicion, and his feelings were no different. Then I see no reason why you're here. Leave. I'm sure you have a village to run. The boy ordered him, and Hiruzen had to snort. I'm afraid I can't do so, Hiruzen said, proceeding to sit on the chair in front of the boy. Gaara released a tired and hard sigh. His breathing was slow but heavy. Then speak, so we could end this already. We can't remove your bindings yet, for obvious reason. Hiruzen began but did not finish his thought, as Gaara spoke once more. I think that this humiliation is actually the greatest thing that has happened to me in my life. His voice really was tired. As if each word he spoke could take away any energy he had. That can happen when you can barely feel your chakra flowing through your body. Hiruzen thought as he watched the auburn-haired boy in front of him. And when you can't feel the presence of your tailed beast. Even if he's still there. Suppressed. I can't hear the voice in my head. He slowly said. And I got to sleep for the first time since I can remember. Yes. I was told that you slept for 4 days without waking up. Hiruzen commented as he looked at him. Open your mouth, child. You need to eat. He took a rice with the chopsticks and moved it towards Gaara's mouth. Just like he did to his own children when they were young. The Jinchuriki of the One-Tail obliged, and the next few minutes were spent in silence as the Sandaime Hokage fed him. The food was not the primary means of digestion, however. Tell me about yourself a bit while I'm here. Hiruzen began. Tell me, who is Gaara of the Sand, in reality? May I know the purpose of all this, as I'm pretty sure that Kaguya has more important businesses to take care of. He said something else, again. And that your village is rather developed and it comes to extracting information from their captives. Perhaps I am doing it right now, Hiruzen said with a laugh. And I won't have anyone invade your privacy if that is a concern of yours. You have my word. Heh, Gaara exclaimed, while his gaze fell to the ground, changing the view between a single spot on the plate, and Hiruzen's eyes. Sarutobi did not push him to speak any further. He took that moment to turn back and look at Danzo, who was holding onto his cane while standing back in the darkness as he always preferred. The black pupil of his narrowed eye did not waver from Hiruzen for even a moment. But, that was something that Sarutobi wanted. I may really be a hypocrite, Danzo, but be happy that I am one for the sake of the village. He was sure that his rival understood what he was doing here. And why he brought him here with him. Konoha had to be stable on both the inside and the outside. Just as their allies had to be if they were to be useful. Raza is the enemy. Sarutobi could see in the boy's eyes that he would open up eventually. Only if someone would listen to him. But his son can be our greatest ally if we play this right. Mabui sat on the chair by the window of the room in the hotel, reading a book about the flowery of the Land of Fire that she had bought in one of the stores, a few weeks back. While she trained Yujito, Omoi, and Karui for the finals, in her spare time, she decided to expand her knowledge on her favorite subject, the flowers. And the Land of Fire was much richer in that knowledge than her own homeland. However, the finals were nothing but a farce for the other two great villages to take care of each other, in their own respective way. Mabui sighed as she closed her book. She did not know what to think of it. Betrayal and dishonor was something she loathed. Even in her profession, there had to be some boundary between what was right and what was wrong. But Suna ignored all of that. And they rightly suffered because of it. She was happy that Naruto had defeated Gaara without much problem and hoped that her help has been of use to him. Rika may have given her a mission of getting close to the boy, and learning as much as she could about him, but the information she gave him about Gaara was by her own volition. At least that way she repaid the debt she owed to his father. She sighed once more, moving her hand to her forehead and slowly rubbing it, hoping to ease the headache that appeared due to unknown reasons. Anxiety was there because of the worry that her village will be involved somehow in this entire mess, or create one in the future from the ashes of the current one. Her uncle certainly knew to stick his nose where it did not belong, and the village elders rarely contradicted him in those endeavors. The day was pretty pleasant, for an early November. Unlike in Konoha, the early snows must have already appeared in her village. Samui told her that there was a chance for her village to be already covered in snow by the time they get back. It was while she was thinking of home, that her best friend, Samui, decided to enter the room the two of them have been sharing together. Samuchan. Mabui barely said, closing her book down, as her friend got to the point right away. The meeting with the Sandaime Hokage is over. Her blonde friend went straight to the bathroom after going straight to the point, first, returning back to the room after a minute or so proceeding to sit down on her bed. Mabui said nothing else. She's not happy. She could see that much from the aura Samui carried around herself. It was not a secret in her village that her best friend hated Konoha with passion. From one point of view, she was right to do so. Her father was killed by the Hyuga clan when he tried to kidnap their heiress. But from the moral perspective, Mabui thought of it as a petty grudge, because she knew very well that her father was not innocent when he died. She never said that to her friend, though. But she was sure that Samui knew that very well, even if she chose to ignore it. What was the talk about, anyway? Mabui asked, placing the book on the nearby table, and moving to sit on the bed opposite of Samui's. She was not told that there would be a meeting with the Hokage. With a smile, she tried to lift the mood of her friend. Surely the Hokage has not been staring at your chest the entire time? Samui stared at the ceiling of their room with her emotionless look, before rising up in a sitting position. Massaging her shoulders, she answered, Rika made an alliance offer to Konoha. Mabui blinked a few times, just to make sure she heard it right. While she had suspected her uncle might do something rash, she knew not why her village was abandoning their proud isolationism that they had enjoyed since the Third War. And what was the Hokage-sama's reply? The aged Hokage must have refused them outright. Mabui could see traces of bitterness in Samui's blue eyes as she spoke the following. He accepted. Or not. Just like that? Mabui asked back, crossing her hands, and her legs. Granted, she did not even know that her village wanted an alliance with Konoha. She mused that the improved relations were enough. Samui sighed. He did say he will have to calm any men that are against it. The Hyuga clan most likely. She muttered. But he said that the alliance will be formalized, eventually. Though, I think that Rika will have to make an apology to the Hyuga clan at the end of the day. Somehow, I find it hard to believe that Asama would apologize to anyone. The man's pride was bigger than his muscles. Samui must have hated the notion of apologizing to them, as well. And both of them agreed that the one ambassador will be chosen for each village, Samui said to her. As she looked into Samui's eyes, something strange started gathering in her body. An unfamiliar sense of fear. Only one more look into Samui's compassionate blue was enough to understand from where that fear came from. And I will be that ambassador. Mabui said, almost in a whisper. I'm sorry, Mabui. Her friend said, moving to sit beside her. Her eyes were filled with pity. Did you know about it? Mabui furrowed her eyebrows together. Before you came to Konoha, I mean. Placing her hand on her shoulder, as a sign of support, Samui spoke. I did. Rika told me and Darui of his plans before we left Kumogakure. He wanted for you to stay in Konoha no matter what. No. Apparently, the village elders were very supportive when it came to this decision. Samui continued. He planned it. Even before the sand had broken their alliance with the leaf. It was probably Raikagesima's idea in the first place. Just like the idea for Kumogakure's involvement in these exams in the first place came from him. It almost looked as if Samui was making an excuse for their Kage. Mabui felt anger in her entire body. He is not innocent in this. Mabui remained silent as she digested the news. Being away from her village was not the most terrible position for a person to be in, but there was always the but. In truth, she knew very well what the true purpose of her presence in the leaf would be. What it would have to develop into. And she hated it so much that she had barely managed to stop herself from screaming. The silent tears, however, were not stopped. They freely fell down her cheeks to her skirt, getting it soaked. Samui came closer to her, enveloping her into a hug. You do know what this means, Mabui? Mabui gave her a quiet nod. Her tears were getting Samui's clothes wet as well. I had my suspicions why my uncle sent me here in the first place. She confessed, remembering his order for her to get familiar with Senju Naruto. But now I am certain why he did it. I hoped that Raikagesima would not go with it, in the end. Samui said slowly. But I guess that he is too adamant in getting what he wants. Adamant in getting what Kumogakure had wanted since the formation of our village. Mabui released a small chuckle, still enveloped in Samui's hug. That does sound like him. She said with a bitter smile. The sooner you are done, the sooner you'll be back home. Remember that. Samui told her, lifting her chin and giving her a kind smile. It was not a common sight for one to see. But Mabui was happy for it nonetheless, even if the realization that came to her slowly crushed every single happy thought that was running in her head at that moment. She would break her moral code, and walk over her own beliefs. No matter how much she wanted to stick by them. Series ends here. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Guys, make sure to help the author by visiting the link in the description. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.